back from our break. Boy, that was a long one, huh? Just about 15 minutes if you turn the clock back a little bit. But anyways, that I thought this morning went well. I think everybody on the call was very sincere in their efforts, and I just wanted to, wrap that discussion up and give anybody any comments on your thoughts of what we heard and where we may go from this point. Anyone have any comments on what you heard? Brian?
Thanks, Bobby. No, I think you wrapped it up pretty well. I think everybody that was on the call is trying their best to at least find the data so that we can formulate some policy decisions when there's enough data. I found Eric's testimony pretty good from UVM, and he's saying that they don't have enough data right now to really make decisions about things. So I don't know if that was, is there a bill in the House about this?
Yeah, 501 or.
Okay. I haven't seen it. So has it already come out of committee?
Not that I know of. Yeah, it's H501. And I don't know what committee it's even in, if it's Ag or Natural Resources.
It was introduced on January 7th and referred to Natural Resources, but it hasn't moved since then.
Yeah. Well, of course, they're pretty busy with probably other issues that came in before. But, I almost came to the conclusion, or I'm almost to the conclusion that, and Chris, not trying to, I think you used to serve on Natural Resources, but I think we pushed the solid waste bill, which needed to be done, but we pushed that along without having all the answers to, well, what are we going to do with this material if it can't go to the dump anymore? And maybe I've forgotten what the outcome was of that discussion, if we ever had it. I know, Brian, you were in Ag back there 6 years ago, and yep. I don't recall ever having that discussion in our room.
I don't think we did.
No, and so, Chris, were you on Natural then?
No, that law was 2012, I think, and it's slowly been evolving. I was in the House on healthcare, so I don't think that anyone envisioned depackaging the depack machines because they weren't a technology that existed. It's had more to do with sort of not a lot of landfill space, and the fact that food waste, it's food waste is a benefit to compost, to soil health, but you have to do it right. I'm just intrigued by this notion that maybe there could be places to spread it that's not our farm field. I mean, no one's growing tomatoes along the highway, as you said, Mr. Chair. I mean, we've sort of accepted that land is not productive in the sense it's being used for society in a different way. And I have believe that there, I'd asked about a moratorium. I don't think that's where we're going to go. But I believe the Agency of Ag has said is not allowing new fields to have application. And I don't understand why that hasn't come forward, and I want to verify that. But we have to figure this out, and I'm very sympathetic to investments businesses have made as their strategy to help the state with this policy. But I mean, if this turns up in 10 years and we see what we're seeing out of Maine, are we really going to feel good and say, well, it was gonna have a big impact on some businesses? I mean, that's ridiculous. We have to protect the land, and if we can prevent it, then I think that's what we should be looking at. How we do that, I don't know. We should just go slow and sort of make sure that we're, I think, protecting the future growing potential of those ag lands.
Oh, I think that was the whole purpose of, from the very beginning of bringing this up and trying to figure that out. And I personally, I never even thought of using median strips, which they mow, but the only thing that's there for is to grow grass and to keep cars from running into each other. But don't forget, we never want to forget that if you contaminate the soil, and as water runs down through that soil, it's got to come out somewheres. And we don't want it in our waters either.
No, you'd have to really be careful, because 100% of our roads cross water.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's not a casual thing. It's just that, the discussion seems to be sort of farm fields or we're not doing it, we're trucking it to Connecticut. And I mean, I don't know. I want to really understand if that's the case. And frankly, I hope A&R maybe, and I really will watch it this morning. I regret not being with you, but I sure hope A&R and Ag could come to us with a recommendation. This is not really stuff that we should try to put our best thinking to. We need the experts to really direct it.
That's why I asked them about whether they were finding it in water yet or in fish, accumulating in fish. And he said that they hadn't really have any information about that at this point, which is kind of too bad. And, when we were first implementing the law, when it was passed and it was coming up to the time to implement it, there was a lot of discussion about what people were going to do in their homes about composting. And there was a lot of controversy around the small truckers, the trash haulers, who were going to have to deal with it in a certain kind of way. But there was no talk really that I can remember about some of these bigger issues about, the depackaging and whatnot. And depackaging, for what it is, I mean, it's fine, but it's a pretty primitive technology too. You just sort of roll it around until it comes separated from one another. So I think we're going to be sorry in 10 years when we find out that it's really having an impact on our water and on our land. And Chris, you talked about sort of a moratorium or whatever. You reminded me of this precautionary principle that they use in other countries, where you have to prove something is safe before you're allowed to use it. Here, you get to use it until somebody proves it's not safe. So by then it's too late, because you've already realized it's not safe. So we go through it backwards a lot of times when it comes to these kind of issues. So I think A&R and ag committees, ag agencies should come up with some way of mitigating the harm that's going to put potential while things are straightening themselves out.
Well, a lot of times, I mean, we have these professionals, but a lot of times it takes us lay people to actually make it work. And they sometimes seem to take a long time to make up their minds, because they don't want to be held accountable 10 years down the road for screwing up. And it's like having only one landfill in the whole state of Vermont. And, we talk about fossil fuel use, and we're trucking garbage from southern Vermont, 180 miles north, to put in one landfill. And to my knowledge, there's no other landfills even being considered, because they just opened up another 50 odd acre site there in Coventry. But that, I mean, I don't know how much you guys have fooled around with waste, but you haven't got to fool around with it long. If you get it liquefied, it runs downhill. And if it runs downhill, usually there's a brook there. If you've gotten down any valley in Vermont and there's not a brook there, you're really in some other state, I guess, because I've never found one. And yeah, that thing in Coventry is right on the Black River. I mean, on a good windy day blowing west, you could spit and it would almost get there. So anyways, that's what you get sometimes by having the professionals figure out a way for you to move forward. But protecting our fields and our soils, that's our job. And I don't know what the answer is, but I know Ben and Jerry's trucked their ice cream all the way down to, I don't recall the name of the town, but I have two cousins that work there at that place in Connecticut. One just retired, but the other one's still there. And they used to have trailer loads of Ben and Jerry's ice cream come in there, and that one cousin that's sort of the boss of the digester and all that stuff would take that ice cream in, and instead of running it through the digester, she would freeze it, refreeze it and bring it home. And hell, we ate Ben and Jerry's ice cream quite often. But it was going to a digester in Connecticut. And like, you wasn't with us, Chris, but when you talk about the manufacturing of dairy products in Vermont, that we used to export, most of our milk went southern New England for beverages. Now we're keeping it home, employing people in our businesses manufacturing products, and we should have a place to handle their waste right here at home. We're creating it, so we should. But Eric Roy from UBM, he said we haven't got the answers yet of the research that we've needed to do all this and get it really right. And it was really a good presentation, I thought, this morning. And the way we had the witnesses set up, it kind of flowed well to get what they're doing and doing their part to try to keep that stuff out of our fields and where it might do harm in the future. Any other comments? Brian?
Yeah, just for the record, it was 2012, Chris. You were correct that the universal recycling law was passed. The other thing that Eric, I think it was Fitch, mentioned from that company, they have found that most of the microplastics stay on the surface. I think he testified to that. So they don't go any deeper and possibly, create issues down below. But that doesn't mean they can't run off, obviously, too. And
Yeah, we
I
worry
think
about the
that
leaching, right? We worry about the PFAS leaching
Yeah,
off of them, I
yeah.
think.
He
So-
said the plastics themselves stay pretty much on the surface. I just find deep packing as one sort of
Yeah,
unique idea to take care of this. It's not, and I don't think Mike Casella would say that it's the only thing, but it's something that they invested in, and at least it takes some of that stuff that otherwise would have gone to the landfill out of it. So I think they're doing, again, I think I've already said it a couple times, but I think those three people that all testified this morning, they're doing what they can to mitigate the issue.
yeah, the power plant right there in South Burlington, that I didn't even know that existed.
Right.
And they're all putting money into Eric Roy's projects up at the university to keep him funded to try to help figure this all out, which I thought was a good sign of a commitment to trying to resolve the issues that we're facing as policymakers.
I mean, I just there's amazing statistics around plastic, and that it's, I forget, don't quote me on this, but it's like half of all the plastic in the world was created in the last 10 years. And we're not going to solve these problems as Vermont, and the microplastics in the ocean, and that you see this pictures of these great floating plastic barges out in the middle of the ocean. I mean, it is shocking. It is a world's problem. We're not going to solve that.
No.
We can maybe protect our farmlands, and to me, it's just helpful to land on a goal that is easy to understand. And it doesn't mean that getting there is easy, but it's sort of simple to say we should protect our farmland, and
Well,
how we do that will not be simple, but but that's where I'm coming from, and I don't despair to anybody. I sort of feel like the Casellas of the world are trying hard to fix a problem not of their making. It's really not of their making, and
no.
they, maybe people argue that we exacerbated the problem with our universal recycling law, but even that is, I don't quite agree with that, but we didn't deal with that. That is a response to this, Nabisco putting plastic and cardboard around everything. I mean, where does it end? I don't know, but it's one of those where society is absorbing the cost, and I just want to make sure that we're as smart and protective as we can be, and recognizing we're not going to turn the world tide on plastic, unfortunately.
No, and well, we'll keep plugging away at it, and hopefully we'll cover our base and try to keep our soils and our land as pure as possible. Did you guys get a copy of Michael's redraft of his letter to the dean? And
Yep.
Yes.
all good with that?
Yep, I
Yes.
sent them back. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll see you at 11:15. We've got our two funding issues in there in the supplemental that Jane will be reporting on, the insurance premium payment, and that's $2.5 million, and then $2 million for working land. So I hope that'll all go well today, and if it comes up, you know, I don't know if she'll yield to me, but if she does, if it does come up, and if any of you have got anything you want to add, you know, jump in. So I guess with that, we'll quit.